us, because we are not afraid of them. Because despite their threats, despite their slander, despite their harassment, we continue to walk towards a sun which we know shines brightly.
To try and help people is amazing. It was very emotional to hear. And hard to believe that it still goes on today and that these women's stories aren't being heard.
In creating this book, Women, War and Peace, digital book, research and resource book. And the book was created as part of a project called Women, War and Peace, which started almost a year ago to this month. And as part of that project, Smashing Times came together with our 3 partners in Poland, Spain and Germany, and we came together to use the arts, theatre and film, to remember the Second World War, but with a focus on the women's stories of the Second World War, and also to look at how we can use the arts to create a remembrance of those stories and link them to work today to promote gender equality and peace building. And one of the first things we had to do was each country had to research 5 women's stories from the Second World War. And we didn't know that many stories.
I thought it was really good to get a perspective, a female perspective. It provides something that as a man we don't really get to see often enough. Oftentimes it's the male perspective, we get to see the male figures in history, so it's really refreshing, and it's, it kind of brings happiness. We get to see this total different side to a society which, the women and the men, we're equal, we're the same, and the fact that we're not getting enough of the women is it's heartbreaking. So it's really, really, really great to see just such emphasis thrust upon and just shown by these women.
It's our inspiration, because day in, day out, they face with unquenchable spirit and courage, uncertainty, risk and horror.
Yeah, it was
fantastic.
It was actually really good.
I thought Russian as Mary Ellen.
She was brilliant.
The story of it was beautiful.
It actually is. It's a beautiful, beautiful monologue. There was actually a lot of stories that came up tonight that I didn't hear before. Like Mary Ellen and the other lady that's Mary was
But even the connections between Irish people and women throughout all of World War II is fascinating. I mean, some stories we have never heard of.
And it's so close to home as well. Like there's a huge connection there with the Irish Jewish women.
But the postcard, I'd just like to read the postcard because it's quite an extraordinary note that was on it. The postcard said, "Uncle Akem we did not find, but we found Uncle Tisha B'Av." Now that sounds like they were talking about finding their relatives, but when it was decoded, it is believed to mean that instead of finding good fortune, the young family found destruction. Lechem is the Hebrew word for bread, and Tisha B'Av is a Jewish feast day commemorating the destruction of the temple.
And I found it really overwhelming hearing the stories of the women of the current day, the frontline defenders, the human rights stories, and how much people risk their lives, and how many women's stories aren't being told or aren't being heard. Really strong stories.
Yeah, that point came across quite strongly. When Mary was speaking about, what we want to teach our kids in schools.
Yeah, and even looking around the room in there's all these big portraits of men and Charles Stewart Parnell, but we don't hear about women. We don't hear about women's stories, and I'm really enjoying the fact that tonight we got to celebrate that and
learn something new about amazing women.
The city of Malaga had fallen to Franco's troops, and something like from 80,000 up to 100,000 people fled the city. So they fled from rape, from executions, from bombings. They fled the city along the coast road, and as those people were fleeing, they were bombed from the sea and sky by the fascist troops, and up to 5,000 men, women and children were murdered in that incident, and it was a massacre. And Mary was there. She was there first of all working for the ambulance service, and then she was there providing relief work, and then she worked running hospitals. Now she worked for the Quakers, and I think what's extraordinary about Mary's story is that she was very active against what was happening, but in a very non-violent way. Her way was to risk her life to work for refugees, because what happened...
I thought it was very inspiring, and the woman spoke from the front line was incredible.
Yeah.
She talked about, women that are now persecuted for stuff that we are celebrating in history, and the stories of women in World War I, and it's still happening, which is just heartbreaking.
What I thought was really interesting is when Mary Wynne was talking about the current junior cert curriculum, and while women in 1916 are currently being celebrated and lauded, that actually if you go and look at the curriculum, that's not necessarily what students are being taught, and it's sort of upsetting because that just perpetuates the
disappearance. Disappearance of women from history and what they did.
Yeah.
And like there's only one probably, Markovic is the only one that anybody remembers, or is the only one that's taught really in schools, which is...
And I think the interesting thing about Mrs. Markovic is that she is really applauded for her almost male qualities and her military training, and she trained troops and women, and those facts seem to be very heavily leaned upon, certainly for students anyway, even when I was in school. I thought the performance was incredible as well by Roisin McCamey. She was really beautiful.
And it was great to see something that Mary Wynne had previously been talking about as a abstract idea of a person to be physicalised and see them in person. Created a much bigger impact as well.
She gave a great backstory to the performance, which was we're big fans of Roisin.